Good evening. I'm Mangesh Karandikar. I head the Department of Communication Journalism, University of Mumbai. Two quick words before I start my presentation. One is I thank all the organizers for this fantastic conference. Second, I wish to apologize to the organizers if some of my mails have caused any discomfort. There were a lot of mails going on the email boxes. And the first paper that I presented, very first research which I conducted and presented my paper, was in the Indian Social Congress 2 years back. And Dr. Sanjay encouraged, he liked the paper of course, and he encouraged me a lot. That actually gave me a lot of encouragement to do further researches. And this is probably my sixth paper that I'm presenting anyway. Thank you, sir, for your encouragement. I'm talking of vanishing in space and time. Why media is not adequately represented, why science is not adequately represented in the media. The presentation is in the beginning slightly, possibly a little frivolous. I'm talking of the worth of science in media. Well, on a Sunday, if I do some work in the house, I'm considered to be invaluable. But if I go and meet my friends at a chaiwala, I'm supposed to be worthless. Sometimes when you are doing research, I tend to sometimes just sit in front of the screen and stare at it, saying that I'm thinking, which is not supposed to be an activity. So I turned to my son for help and asked him to explain it to his mother. But since he doesn't know anything about it, doesn't understand both the sides, he is confused. So I need to make my explanations about what I do a little simpler and communicate maybe directly to my wife so that she understands what I'm doing. And my son needs to be a little mature and try to understand what both sides are saying, giving the facts in a rather simpler manner. So I'm unable to explain what I do. My son doesn't understand and is confused. And the boss of the house doesn't understand because of that. That's exactly the case with scientists and science communication, the media and media professionals, and the public. In a way, an analogy. This is exactly what happens. Then how does the science treat, how does media treat science? It gets space and time only when there is kind of breaking news kind of story, little sensational. Two quick theories which came up in the review of literature. I could read about 90 research papers, out of which only a couple of them I can present in this limited period of time. But Susan Muller defined 4 stages of news cycle in a book called How the Media Sell Disease, Famine, War and Death. The first stage is constantly replaying the key imagery. We have seen that when there is a death, when there is a famine, there is anything that is sensational, the same set of images are repeated over and over again. Probably because they don't have more visuals, but it creates a kind of panic. After that panic stage is gone, then you have a second stage where you try to seek justice, try to find the perpetrators and get a response from the authorities. In the initial stages, probably there is no response from the authorities. It's just sensationalism. In the third stage, you have got public mourning of a calamity, of a war, of a, say, extremist attack. And the coverage now shifts to the audience instead of the news itself. It shifts to the audience and creating a psychological space to purge the negative emotion. Because in the beginning stages, they have created the panic. Now you have to curb those emotional feelings. And after a period of time, the news is closed. There's a closure of the news. A similar study was done by Sheldon Ungar, a news cycle of the bird flu. In that, you see that the first stage is sounding the alarm that there is a bird flu and there is a huge panic created among the public by the media. The second stage is mixed messages because now that the panic is there and the media has found out that, oh, probably this is not the real intensity of the situation. We have to kind of tone it down. So there are mixed messages, efforts to reassure the public that everything is okay. The third stage is a hot crisis content, efforts to undo the frightful element of the bird flu. That was the study carried out by Ungar. But this particular study did not mention the closure of the story. but this is how it happens. These kind of situations increases the gap between the public and the scientists, because most of the scientific news, either it comes only when it is a kind of breaking news, only when it is sensationalist, and then it dies down, because by the time it has reached that fourth stage of presentation, there is some other breaking news, some other news which has got precedence over this particular kind of news. To find this reason, I had conducted a very small study, talked to around 20-30 journalists. I took email interviews of about 13-14 relevant interviews and got my paper, and talked to a few scientists from ISRO and from meteorological department, etc. The results were quite interesting. Actually, the results were in line, in tune with all those reviews that literature I've read. It's a worldwide phenomenon. One important study which mentioned that scientists use the deficit model of communication, which essentially assumes public deficiency but scientific sufficiency. This actually has a very, very important result, that it results in a purely one-way communication. And the one-way communication is also from a position of authority, from a position of dominance, mostly by the scientists. They think that the public doesn't understand anything and there's a huge vacuum, and they need to fill that vacuum, and that vacuum can be filled only by me. That's the kind of approach usually taken by the scientists, and that actually creates a lot of problems. And when that kind of approach is taken by anybody, let's not talk of even scientists. If we talk of even books like "I am okay, you are okay," those kind of things. The communication between two people, if you study that, if you take a parent-child approach, the child is not going to say anything. That's what usually happens when you're talking of scientists talking to the public. I mean, direct interactions. Scientists shy away from the camera. These are the results of both the review as well as my small research which I conducted. Scientists tend to be shy of the camera. They don't like to be in front of the camera. They cannot explain the usefulness of the study in daily life. So I do conduct a lot of experiments, and probably that experiment may not have direct relevance to my day-to-day life, but maybe even that could be explained in a slightly better manner. Yeah, I'm exceeding time? Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll go through this very, very quickly. Reporters do not have easy access to scientists and their study. Too much secrecy is maintained by the scientific organizations. Scientific content is not available in vernacular language. That's a very major thing that comes out, and that is a result of other studies which I made also. Again, now from the reporter's side, reporters do not have science background, are not trained to write in science. I think these have been already discussed by several speakers, including Dr. Sanjay. Other human stories take relevance. One small point, in some researches conducted by our students in the department, it is found that poverty has only 0.1% space in 1 year of Times of India, and education has 1%, and women's issues has about 1.1% of space in Times of India 1 year. Channels do not have technical aptitude and skill, and there is lack of visuals, which is again a very, very important point which came out through the research. No lack of visuals. Lastly, when I interviewed scientists, there were one scientist was, frankly speaking, a horrible communicator, and even I couldn't understand what. And that scientist could not understand my questions because that scientist refused to listen to my questions. Of course, that is not a generalization. It was only one scientist. The rest were fantastic communicators. But maybe that one scientist who is in a responsible position will probably, give that feeling that scientists are all like that. I guess that's the time which I have. One last thing is that the onus is also on the public, and the internet could be a very important medium of science communications. Thank you very much.